Hello, people. I am back for another video. Taking a break for a little bit. I'm gonna still do horror. I'll probably do like a horror movie this month, like review wise. But I'm gonna be taught. I figured why not do a video? I was maybe not. I was originally probably not gonna do a video this weekend, but this idea just hit in my head. Why not talk about my top 20 favorite comic book films of all time and do it right? So I figured, let's do it. So, because I feel like there's been some really good comic book films over the years, and I've talked about the state of modern comic book films, how they're all just samey now, both DC and Marvel. But why not talk about like the good ones that like I feel like that have had impact in my life, and just do that, you know? And I will get back to reviews. I'll probably do a review this week. I'll find some random review even and do that. So, but anyways, let's get into it. Subscribe to Pin Down Podcast. We should be live next Saturday officially for our normal Saturday show, and then maybe we'll do like a Wrestling Empire stream sometime this week. So look out for that. But I guess we'll get into my list. My top 20 comic book films of all time. Number 20 is Captain America, Winter Soldier. If I had to do 25, Captain America, the first one, would have made it, but I figured let's just keep it at 20 because I feel like this might be a while. So why not? I don't want to go too fucking long, you know? So I was like, I figure 20 is perfect. So, but Captain America Winter Soldier, this is easily, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, there's outside of Captain America Winter Soldier, there's no MCU in my list. I'm just going to keep it real. Outside of a couple of movies that I think are good, and if I branched it out to like 30 or like something like that, some of them would make it. But if I just kept it at 20, I'm sorry, guys. Outside of this film, I don't think I could justify. Like, I like Winter Soldier. I mean, not Winter Soldier. That's on the list. I like Guardians. But I can't justify putting it in the top 20. I think it's a good movie. But I also think it has had a negative impact, in a sense. It's not its fault, but it's the fault of people who wanted to copy it. And just, unfortunately, every movie just tries to be Guardians now. Hell, even just within the MCU, look at Thor Ragnarok. That was basically a Guardians movie. With the music, the zany characters, but they weren't as good. And I feel like they took the wrong lesson from that fucking movie. So that's another reason I'm just going to be real with you. I can't justify putting it in my top 20 just because of that. But if I'm just taking that out of it, I just don't think it's a top 20 comic book movie. It would be maybe top 25. Like, I could push it to 25 maybe. But, yeah, no. I had to keep it just top 20. So, I think Winter Soldier is the best Marvel movie. MCU movie. I think it actually doesn't just feel like another Marvel movie. I love the whole twist with Hydra. Robert Redford was so fucking good. Probably, in my opinion, this is probably Chris Evans' best performance as Cap. I know some people would, Civil War. No. I think this is his best performance. I think he was good in the first one too, but I think this one it's a perfect movie. You have a good villain. I like what they do with Bucky. I love the final fight, and even just the road fight. Even just take the fights out of it. It's just a good story. I love like the addition of, in my opinion, this is Falcon's best. Anthony Mackie's best performance as Falcon in all the movies. I think this is his best performance. I think he's really good in this movie. The whole twist with Hydra, obviously, just that reveal. Unfortunately, I wish I saw this in theaters. I didn't. I saw this when I saw this a little bit after, because I think I just didn't get to see it. So, but I really feel like this it has everything. That the elevator fight, just it also is like it's a heist movie, not a heist movie, but it's like a an espionage movie. I like that it doesn't just feel like another superhero movie. And it's really unfortunate that Marvel did not take the lessons from this movie. This should have been the movie. Not saying every Marvel movie needed to be have this obviously tone or anything, but a lot of their better movies should have taken, and it really unfortunate too. Civil War decided, you know what, we're gonna just do a fucking half-ass Civil War movie instead of just doing a solid Cap 3. Because you had such a good foundation to build off of to do a nice solid third Cap movie, and you fucking shit the bed because you had to try to force Civil War in there for no fucking reason. You were already ahead of DC. Why did you need to do a Cap Iron Man fight? No, you could have did that later. You could have did that way later, to be honest with you. You didn't need to do that now. I don't know. But Winter Soldier is so good. I rewatched this one a lot. I'll admit I didn't rewatch it this much this year, but I'm gonna probably do that some soon. I just think I think that's gonna be the theme of a lot of my favorite comic book movies. They don't feel like comic book movies. They also feel like this is when comic book movies tried to also be like their own thing and try to be in also other genres. They also toyed with other being like Blade, which obviously is going to be my list, obviously higher up. But the same thing. Even Blade 2, like it wasn't just like a normal comic book movie. It was like a fucking little bit kind of horror elements because of the vampires stuff. So you had these movies had all different tones. Some were serious, some were a little bit more comic. Another one this will probably be like an honorable mention. The first Deadpool. I didn't put that on my list because I like the first Deadpool, but if I'm comparing it to some of these other movies, I just don't think I can put it that high. But it's definitely up there. I love the first Deadpool. I think if I was branching it would probably be like 21. If I'm being honest with you, it'd probably be 21. But it just, if I'm keeping it at 20, I just don't think it makes that, honestly. I just don't. It's close. Like, it's on the cusp, but there's just a couple things holding it back, but it's definitely up there. Like, if I was doing a 25, it'd be 21. But getting back to Winter Soldier really quick before I wrap this section up, I think Winter Soldier is great. It's just a perfect movie. In my opinion, probably the only time I really felt like Sebastian Stan as Winter Soldier was really fully realized. Because unfortunately, even in Civil War, he was almost just the fucking MacGuffin. Or the MacGuffin, but or the McMuffin. Basically, he's the MacGuffin. He's just there to get me, because Cap needs to protect him, and then Iron Man wants him. So it's just like he doesn't feel like fully a character. He mattered in that movie, but if I'm being fucking real with you, he felt like a MacGuffin more than a character. This movie, he actually felt like a character. So it's unfortunate that almost over 10 years later that fucking he's barely used. But if I'm being objective, if I'm just focusing on this movie, he was great. So let's jump to my number 19. The first Hellboy movie. This is a movie that I remember watching as a kid, and it was something different. Because I had read some Hellboy comics, but because my dad had some, but I didn't fully know the character. And man, I thought this was such a perfect way to know him. Yet Alan Tudyk, no, I think it was Alan Tudyk or Alan Cummings, one of the two. I think it was Cummings actually, not Tudyk. Alan Cummings as the aquatic creature. I just in general, I love that Hellboy is just these random stories. It's like this. It's a weird thing because he's basically a devil, but he's actually a good guy. Obviously he's not like a typical good guy, but I love the story. He had a good cast. The villain was solid. I even liked the sequel, but obviously I couldn't put that on the list. But if I'm just, this was a fun theater experience, and Ron Perlman is Hellboy. Whatever I think of him as a person is irrelevant. He is great as the character. He is that character. And unfortunately, Hellboy has just been in a shit fucking cycle because you had that really bad David Harbour one. The only positive was that was the only positive I have of that movie. It was more in tone of the comics, in the sense of it was R-rated, because those comics actually get pretty dark. Like the Ron Perlman ones are PG-13, right? But the actual story is R-rated. But outside of that, the David Harbour one was terrible. I like Mila Jovovich, but she did not work as the villain. And I don't even think the archetype for a villain was the type of villain they should have did anyway. I don't think David Harbour was terrible. I think there's a chance if you had a decent script, he could have worked. But yeah. And then you had that Crooked Man one, which was awful. That came out, like, I think it was last year. Um, yeah, so it just. But the original Hellboy movie is great. I love the tone of it. And it was nice just seeing a character that's not Marvel or DC fucking actually be able to be successful. It's unfortunate that we don't get that now, that we can't get it. Like, Spawn is just, they keep saying they're going to do a Spawn movie, but it's just never getting off the ground. I think a good Spawn movie could easily, that could probably make my list someday if you had a great Spawn movie. But it's not going to happen. And then Hellboy, I don't know what the fuck they're doing with that. So it's like, these characters that are not DC or Marvel are in this weird limbo right now. Because I would love a non-Marvel DC comic book movie. As much as I love Marvel and DC, I am getting a little burnt out on just Marvel and DC stuff as fans of those brands. So it would be nice to see a comic book film that's not Marvel. Because I have another one that's not Marvel or DC that's on my list. So it's like, anyway. But yeah, Hellboy is great. So that's my number 19. Getting to number 18. Let me take my head real quick. My number 18, and I know it's a little lower for me, but it did make the list, is the Snyder Cut. I really like the Snyder Cut. Y'all know I like the Snyderverse. I don't have BVS up here. I think it would be in top 25, but I do have Man of Steel. It is a little high, but it is up there. But Snyder Cut was great. I think if you trimmed certain scenes down, like if you cut it down to like 3.5 hours, I think it'd be a perfect movie. Like, I love how the team was built. I love the start of the movie. I love the cinematography. Steppenwolf as a villain was really well done, and it's really unfortunate that how they did him in the live action. I'm just gonna say, the live action, he came off like just a generic guy in armor. He didn't really feel threatening. And then the fact that Darkseid's actually in the movie in this one, the Darkseid scenes, just every time I watch it, I'll admit I'm a little burnt. There was a period I was a little burnt out on comic book stuff, so outside of certain ones, I didn't watch them as much, but I have been rewatching them again. And yeah, the Snyder Cut's still good. I think this is probably my favorite version of Mo as Aquaman, because a lot of later ones, he's just the surfer bro, and I just feel like at least this one, they dialed it down, and it's unfortunate we didn't get to see it, because it just feels like they just went uber surfer bro. So at least they dialed it down in this movie. You got the different worlds, like Atlantis, you got a little bit of Themyscira, and obviously our Metropolis, even a little Gotham. And I love the progression of Batfleck's character. And as much as I think Ezra Miller is a piece of shit, at least I think this is the most likable he is, and I actually think this is the best he showcased. I still don't like the run, but I thought this is easily his best showcase. I love the scene with the like where he has to go back in time and try to stop the world from getting destroyed. Um, and yeah, the boxes were MacGuffins, but they actually mattered. They actually explained what the boxes were and why they matter. And that's my thing. I don't have a problem with MacGuffins inherently, because if we're gonna be real, there's a lot of stuff like that. There's always MacGuffins in movies, even in movies we fucking like. But if you can actually explain why that quote unquote MacGuffin is important and why everybody's after it, that's all I need. That's a lot of all I ask, really. Just explain why it's necessary. Because if it's just a thing you need to get, then because at that point it's just a thing to get the quote unquote plot going. But you're not actually doing anything. So at least here, you're explaining it and it's explaining why it matters and why everybody wants it. Yeah. And the Superman scenes are great. The black suit scene, man, it's so fucking good. Yeah, everything about Snyder Cut is great. So, but I guess we're gonna get into number 17 now, and that is Punisher 2004, the Thomas Jane one. I think this. I remember seeing this in theaters as a kid, and I had always loved Punisher because in my mind, he was a perfect cinematic character. Because if we're gonna be real with you, he's basically an action guy. He's a guy with guns. He just goes in and kills people, and he's very street level. And I think that's another reason why I liked it. It was very street level. Warzone, I really do like, and do I prefer it more as a comic book Punisher movie? Yes. But I think this one is probably a better movie, if I'm being honest. John Travolta as the villain was good. Obviously, they changed certain elements of the story because it's not like the comic, but that's fine. I don't inherently hate if you would change certain things if the changes make sense and and actually the changes make sense and fucking are explained and it's actually good, then I don't have a problem with it. And I thought they did a good job here with it. The scene where they murder his whole family is so tragic, and you're down for the revenge story. I do like Thomas Jane's look, and obviously, the only thing I wish is it leaned a little bit more into comic book stuff, but that's fine. I think they still did it like a good action movie. I thought Thomas Jane, once he suited up, was well done. That Kevin Nash fight, where he plays this big fucking Russian dude, is so fucking great. And unfortunately, Kevin Nash actually got stabbed during that fight, unfortunately. But that fight is so fucking good. It's visceral, it's hard hitting, it has everything you kind of want in a comic book fight, And the scene where he finally gets his revenge is so well done. And John Travolta kills it as the villain. So, overall, yeah, Punisher 2004 is a great one. So, I had to put it on the list. So, that's my number 17. Number 16, Blade 2. I think Blade 2 is a perfect sequel. I like that it leans a little bit more into the comic book aspect of Blade because, yeah, the first one is good, but it definitely is more about him just straight up killing vampires. It doesn't lean as much into the comics aspect of it like this one does. Because this one, like, even the fight with the final Neo, the fucking other type of vampire, you actually get like an actual fight, And I love the different type of vampire you get, and then the tie-in with the villain, who unfortunately has a team up with Blade. Obviously, he double crosses them later on, but Ron Perlman as one of the villains was good. I like the characters, and then the only thing, like, if I had one criticism, I didn't need Norman Reedus to go bad. That felt forced. That was just kind of thrown in there. That felt like, really, did we need him to go bad? Because I actually didn't mind him. I think it was Scud was his name. I didn't mind that character. He was kind of fun as that character. And like I said, it leaned a little bit more into the comic aspects, even with some of the fights. It definitely leaned more into the comic stuff, especially in the final fight. which was very well done. And Wesley Snipes still kills at his Blade. You got Whistler, and I like the addition of the extra vampires, and they're forced to work with Blade, which I like that aspect. Donnie Yen is one of them. Yeah, overall, I love Blade 2. I think it's a perfect sequel. I think the first one is probably a better movie, but I definitely love Blade 2. So, number 15 is fucking. I know it's a little low, but I have to put it on here. The first X-Men. I think the first X-Men is good, but the reason I have it a little lower is the aspect of Rogue. I don't like how Rogue's done in this movie. I think she gets a little bit done better, a little bit better in the second one, but I feel like the problem I have with Rogue in this movie is just she's too angsty and it's teen angst that that's not Rogue. But everything else is good. I think this was the first comic book film that really showed people that this is a comic book film. Because unfortunately, if you remember, after Batman and Robin, it was almost embarrassing to be a comic book film at that time. So I kind of get why you want to like distance yourself from that. That's why even the first Blade is more leans into he's just a badass guy killing vampires. Because I'm gonna be real with you, they didn't market it as a comic book film, and I think a lot of people don't know that. I love the first X-Men Blade movie, and it is what saved Marvel. But if we're being fucking real, what really got the comic book like aspect going was this movie, because everybody knew comic X-Men was a comic book thing. That's a superhero thing. Hugh Jackman was perfect casting as Wolverine. There was a reason he was Wolverine. He's Wolverine even to this day. You know, obviously the black leather suits don't age well, but it's still a good movie. I think Tyler Mane as Sabretooth is decent. Fucking Ian McKellen as Magneto is so iconic. He really nailed the role, and then obviously Patrick Stewart as Xavier was well done. It kind of got the basics right. It was like X-Men versus the Brotherhood, basically. It got the basics right of X-Men, and this was a way to get normies. So, like, you know what? Comic book movies can actually be good. And it's just, obviously, some of the later films kind of fuck things up once you get to, like, X3 and some stuff, but I really like this movie. I think the first X-Men was nice. It was nice and basic. It got the basics right. I thought the final fight was fun. I will always watch this as a kid. I mean, even to this day, I watch this movie. I think the first X-Men is it's just done well. I love Hugh Jackman's intro to the movie, where he's like in this fucking bar and he's fighting people. Like, he does fights to make money. So, yeah. I think we're on 14 now. Number 14 is Sin City. Sin City was this is more of a comic book film than necessarily a superhero film. So I'll probably just retitle it comic book film than just superhero. But Sin City I had to include because this was straight up like the comic, and I love like the anthology style of it. You got all these interesting characters: Yellow Bastard, Josh Brolin. You even have Bruce Willis for a little bit. Like, it has all these different characters. The second one isn't as good, but the first one is very well done. It came out at the right time. It came out in 2005. It was something different. And it's like, once again, it's a movie that's not necessarily Marvel or DC that actually like is good. and it was a unique take. Robert Rodriguez did a really good job directing it, and the direction style and just everything about it. Just um, unfortunately, just I think they should have just left it one film. We didn't really need it to. They waited too long. I think if the second one came out like 2007 or even 2008 or something, it could have worked. But they waited too long. I don't even think it was Robert Rodriguez. I got the director wrong, I'm pretty sure. But whoever directed this one is really well done. And I wish I saw this in theaters. I saw this one like way later, but I love the style. It's very gritty. This is what I mean too. Comic book films, all back at least at that time, had different styles. You know, you had some grittier comic book films. You had your like kind of more lighthearted films like the Spider-Man films or the Superman films. But you also had like I said, the grittier films like this one, and then my number one, which is Watchmen. So it's like you were allowed to have different takes on superheroes back then, and it just and I think that's why I like it so much. And yeah, Sin City's great. So that's my number 14. Sorry, not 15. 14. My number 13 is is Superman 2. I know this is a little low, but Superman 2 is really well done. And I think it's probably one of my favorite ones of the Donner Superman movies. I think the first one edges it out as a movie, even though there's little aspects I don't like, but I think it's still a little bit of a better movie. But Superman 2, I think, leans into the comic aspect. Obviously, there's some goofy stuff with like him throwing the S and shit and all that, but I think I love his relationship with Lois, and I'm talking about the I actually like both the Donner cut and the Lester cut. And Terrence Stamp as Zod is iconic. Neil before Zod. This is probably, and I'm not even, y'all know, I'm not a big fan of Hackman's Lex. I love Hackman, R.I.P. Hackman, as an actor. I don't love his Lex. I will say this is probably the most he's felt like the actual comic book Lex Luthor compared to the other movies. This is the closest he felt like to Lex. I love the Niagara Falls scene. I love the music. I love the rescue at and I know this is more of the Lester cut, but the Eiffel Tower. And yeah, I just think it's a fun movie. I rewatched it a couple times. It's not my favorite Superman movie, but I do. For a while, it was my favorite Donner film, but I've grown to appreciate more of the original more. But I think Superman 2 is still really good, and I do feel like it it's made its stamp on comic book movies. It it really. I mean, even Zod. I mean, I love Man of Steel, but there's a reason they reused Zod for Man of Steel was because of this movie, and for the time, obviously, by today's standards, the fight isn't the best looking, but it was kind of cool to watch in this movie. We got to see Christopher Reeve Superman actually throw down and actually fight, because unfortunately, in some of the other movies, I mean, because let's be real, even though he does fight Nuclear Man in 4, it's not good. So it's actually kind of, at least in this one, the fight is well done and it's actually good. So at least you have that. It's not like, even by today's standards, obviously it's not going to look great, but it's still done well. And I don't know. I just think Superman 2 was great. The only scene that doesn't age well for me is probably the scene at the bar where he comes back and he throws the guy, and like Superman wouldn't do that. I get the guy was a little bit of a douchebag, but Superman wouldn't do that. But outside of that, I still think it's a good movie. So I rewatch Superman 2 very often. Number 12 is gonna be, you know what? I'm gonna count this one, and I know this is technically not a DC Marvel movie, but fuck it, I am gonna count it. This is more of a last second change, but fuck it, I'm gonna add it. The Incredibles. I think The Incredibles is a very well done superhero movie. I love the arc of Mr. Incredible, like, you know, having to live with the fact he's not the big man anymore. And I love how much it is honestly probably the best Fantastic Four movie. I love the use of all the family in this movie. Syndrome, and I think it works. Like, the whole, like, he's an obsessed fan who wants to be a fucking, who turns into a villain. I think it's done well. I love how each of the family get to use their powers, and it's just a fun movie. It's probably one of Pixar's best movies. I even say Disney's best movies in general, not even just Pixar, like just Disney's best movies that I rewatch probably the most. Two isn't as good, but I do think one is really good. And I definitely recommend it. If you've never seen it, watch The Incredibles. It's a great movie. And I figure, why not put on this list? I know it's not DC or Marvel, but fuck it, I have some non-DC Marvel movies on here. So why not put them on? Why not include The Incredibles? So, yeah. So number 12 is The Incredibles. Number 11 is X-Men Days of Future Past. I had to put this on here because it almost made the top 10, because there's times where I was a little bit more preferred it over X2, but I've kind of come back to X2 being a little bit above it. But X-Men Days of Future Past is great. I think, as much as I like First Class, I think this is a better movie. I love the way it tied both, like, obviously the classic X-Men we grew up with from the original movies, and then the newer cast from Days of Future, from First Class. So it was kind of cool that they tied it all together. It was cool seeing Ian McKellen again. And when I'm talking about this movie, I'm talking about the Rogue cut. I'm not talking about the regular cut. I think the regular cut is actually really good too. But the Rogue cut, you get to see them rescue Rogue. I actually think that flows much better for the movie than, because I think in the regular cut it's them going back for the helmet, but in the Rogue cut it's them going for Rogue, and Rogue takes over for Kitty, who's that's how she has powers to be able to keep Wolverine stable while he's being transported back in time, and she gets stabbed and she's starting to lose health. So she comes in and it works so much better. And I love the scene between Patrick Stewart, Xavier, and the new Xavier. I can't think of his name right now, but. And then Michael Fassbender is fucking Magneto. That's the only thing I wish the movie had, was Michael Fassbender, Magneto, and Ian McKellen. James McAvoy. Fucking dumb. James McAvoy, Xavier, and Patrick Stewart Xavier. That scene's great. I do kind of wish we got a Fassbender, Ian McKellen scene, but that's fine. And I love the scene where, like, and it actually has a nice mix of That's the one thing I like about the X-Men movies in general, is it had a nice balance of, there's a lot of the serious stuff with the mutants stuff, and just in general they're a little bit more serious, but you also have a little bit of comedic elements, like even the element of Wolverine having to be peacemaker between Xavier and fucking Magneto. So, you know, when they rescue and then obviously the Quicksilver scene is fucking iconic. They even, obviously it wasn't as good, but they recreated it again in Apocalypse, but in this, the scene in this movie is fucking great. And it looks better than the fucking Flash. And keep in mind, this movie came out in 2014. And the Flash was almost 10 years later in 2023. And this movie looked so much better. and just and this is probably, and I'm not a fan of Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique, but this is probably the best she's been. Was probably the best she's looked as Mystique was in this movie. So it had just a lot, and I didn't love the Sentinel design, but you actually do get the more classic Sentinel design in the '60s, and then you get like because they were basically using their powers, and they end up using the reason they're able to, because they use Mystique's like shape shifting ability, and that's why Trask was a good villain too. He's in a lot of scenes, but he's used well, and and I can't the actor for fucking Trask is a fucking douche, but in real life, but he's he's still good in this movie. So overall, X-Men Days of Future Past is great. I rewatch it often, especially the road cut. I think that's the only version I watch now. But even just the base cut is really good too. So X-Men Days of Future Past is great. So that's my number 11. My number 10, it is another X-Men movie, X2. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put it a little higher, put that at 9. My number 10 is going to be Blade. I think the first Blade, I had to put it in my top 10. I think Blade is what saved Marvel. And I love how simple it is. It's just a man hunting vampires. He saves this nurse and he gives her the cure and she tries to help him out. You meet Whistler, and the villain's great. He's just a simple vampire who just wants power. But it's just simple. I think that's why the first Blade works. It's just the simplicity of it. And I understand. You gotta understand. This movie came out in 1998, a year after Batman and Robin. And Batman and Robin did kind of hurt comic book movies, or at least the perception of it, because now that's when people thought it was just kiddie shit. So they're like, I can kind of understand not leaning into the comic book aspect of Blade and just more make it like, okay, he's just a guy hunting vampires. Yeah, Steven Dorff is great as the villain. I think he kills it. He's an asshole. He wants power, but he's almost a simple villain. I think he works as like a first movie villain. He's not over the top. He's not uber powerful. Yeah, he works as a simple villain. I think everything about the first Blade is just great. I watch it like often, and I think it's R rated. It leans into the dark aspect, and I think it understands. Okay, Blade, he needs to be R rated. You can't make it a PG-13 movie, and that's why, like, you wonder why they're having a hard time, because Marvel's trying to make fit a square into a circle. It doesn't make sense. You can't make Blade PG-13. And I know people, they're gonna, oh, they can make it dark. No, Blade needs to be R rated. And that's why. And I think Marvel needs to understand, if you can't branch out and do R-rated movies, and the only exception being Deadpool and Wolverine, which I only think you did because I wouldn't be surprised if Ryan Reynolds threatened to, if you guys try to make PG-13, I'm walking. And they caved. So that was more of like, you had to do it kind of deal. So Blade they own. So they can just be like, yeah, we'll make it PG-13 because we have the power to. And you can't just make it R-rated, and that's why the first Blade worked. And Marvel, I'm going to say it, the MCU has kind of lost the art of making just simple films like Blade. MCU now could not make a Blade. Maybe the MCU in the beginning, but it could not make a Blade movie like this one, where it's just simplicity. Because it's just, everything about it is simple. It didn't even really lean into the comic book aspect. It kept focus on just, this is a man hunting vampires. And you get a little bit of his history, like, oh, he's a man who, he's half vampire, but that's all you know. And the scene where he finds Whistler dead, and he has like that little moment honoring him, and then he just fucking gets ready to fucking fuck up a bunch of vampires. Yeah, it's great. And I love the final fight. I mean, motherfucker's always ice skating uphill. Like, you know what I mean? It's just quotable. And then you got the what the fuck scene. Like, it's just such a quotable movie. Yeah. Blade's great. I had to put it at number 10. Number 9 is X2. Another X-Men movie. I think it's probably the best X-Men movie. I think just everything about it, a good plot. I love the Wolverine story. I don't love that they make him and Lady Deathstrike separate, because if you remember in the comics, that's actually his girlfriend, Aurora. That's like his actual girlfriend in the comics, but they changed it. But because it was a story from him in like Japan and whatever, but I still think X2 is perfect. I remember seeing this movie in theaters. They got everything right. Yeah, the suits still don't look great, but if you take that aspect out of it, it's still a great comic book film. William Stryker was great casting. Like, William Stryker in this movie is so fucking good. I really think I love the scene in the where like Stryker and his people try to raid the mansion, and Wolverine just goes ham. Like, even though it's not bloody and R rated, it's still like you get a little taste of violent Wolverine, and um, it's just everything I want in an X-Men movie. I know I don't have Logan on my list, but when I was making this list, I wanted to more focus on films I actively rewatch. And I'll be real with you, I don't rewatch Logan often. It's good, but it is a little bit of a downer. So because of that, that's another one. If I was branching to top 25, it would make it. But yeah, X2 though, I rewatch often. It's just a perfect movie. I even like the Lady Deathstrike fight. It leans a lot more into the comic aspect. I even like the fact that, like, you know, as much as Magneto, even though he has his own little ulterior motive, he has no choice but to work with the X-Men, because you have this guy who's anti-mutant. You might as well have all the mutants team up to try to take him down. So, you know, and you get a little bit more of Bobby, because I actually don't mind the guy who they got the cast to be Bobby. I thought he was done well, and as much as I have my issues with Anna Paquin's Rogue, she's still not perfect in this movie, but they at least make her a little bit more sassy, and they do dial back the angst. They very much do dial back the angst of her Rogue. So at least she feels a little bit more like the comic book character. We also get Pyro. I thought he was, even in this movie, even though he's just a student in this movie, he has more of a bigger role in the third movie. But I do like that you do get a little bit of him in this, so he actually feels like a character. So overall, X2 is a great movie. So that's my number 9. My number 8 is, and I know this is a little low, but I have to put it on here, Batman Returns. And this is where we're going to be getting a little bit of Batman once we get to the upper echelon. But Batman Returns is just such a good movie. I think it's the most comic book feeling of the Burton films, because you have Penguin, you have Catwoman, you have more of the world. Even though he's not a comic book villain, I love Christopher Walken's villain in this movie. I thought he was done well. I love the aesthetic of Gotham with like the snow and a little bit of the Christmas feel to it. And I'll admit, is it my favorite version of the Penguin? Like, I love Danny DeVito. I'll admit, is it my favorite version of the Penguin? No, I prefer more like Penguin, more like in the game, in the Arkham games, and in the animated series, where he's more of like he's like a politician. He just looks a little weird, but he's more of a politician. He's not like, they leaned a little bit too much. I'm actually okay with it though, because it's Burton. So and I thought it works. The aesthetic of Penguin look, he does look fucking creepy, and it's still in it ages well. And Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman is so fucking good. She still has not been beaten as Catwoman even to this day. She's still not been beaten as Catwoman. So I think she's just so, everything about this movie I like. I always watch it every Christmas. I even watch it before Christmas. Sometimes if I just watch Batman 89, I'll just put Batman Returns on right after. It works. Keaton's fighting style I think looks a little better. You know, as much as I like 89, that's still very high up on my list. I do think the fighting is a little wonky, and I'm okay with it because it was 1989. You got to remember, they still didn't really fully take comic book films at that time seriously like they do now or in the 2000s. Or they actually did try to put a little more detail in the fights and stuff. So I'm okay with the fights looking a little wonky. But yeah, and you get more of the Batmobile. You get more of like Batman's tech in the movie too. So I like that. And I think Michael Keaton and Michelle Pfeiffer's relation chemistry is great. They have really good chemistry in the movie. Like, it is the best Batman Catwoman dynamic live action we've seen. I guess the next one would be technically Bale and Anne Hathaway, but if I'm being real, it's this one. It hasn't been matched. So overall, I love Batman Returns. So I had to put that on the list. I know it's a little low, but still isn't top 10. So number 7 is Superman 78. This was one that I always watched as a kid and I always liked. And this is definitely the blueprint for a lot of superhero origins. I mean, I love Spider Man, which I have a little higher up, the first Spider Man. But it definitely took a lot from this movie in the sense of how to do an origin. Because you got his powers, you got how he landed on Earth, you got him training a little bit with his powers, and then you got the transition to the city and the scene where he saves Lois from the helicopters to iconic, the music. There's little things I don't like, and there's little things I make fun of sometimes just because of the age. Like, I'll admit, I've said it, I'm not a fan of Hackman's Lex. I think he felt like just dumb rich dude. There was no LexCorp and all that. I like that. I didn't like that they really cut that aspect about the character. But outside of that, I still think it's an iconic movie. This is easily more, and I'm not as into Margot Kidder's Lois as a lot of people are, but I still think she's really good in this one. Christopher Reeve is Superman. This movie really does make you believe a man can fly, especially if you saw it back in 1978. And like I said, it's the prototype for a lot of superhero origins. That's why I still have it very high up on my list. It's not my favorite Superman movie, but it's definitely up there. So, and number 5 is actually my favorite Superman movie. But yeah, definitely Superman 78 is still iconic. It it's what it's what kind of like really show you could do superhero movie. And that's why Superman, a lot of these movies got multiple sequels after this because this movie did well, and it's the highest grossing Superman movie even to this day. So yeah, Superman 78 is the prototype. and there's a reason it's on this list. So, my number 6 is Man of Steel. Man of Steel is, to me, my favorite Superman movie. It's more like the animated series. I know a lot of people don't like the Fortress of Solitude in it, but because I think a lot of people more prefer the crystal look of the Fortress of Solitude, like in the Donner films. But I like that it looked little bit more like the comic Krypton. Henry Cavill to me is Superman. He has the look of Superman, and I thought he did a good job at both Man of Steel, BVS, and obviously the Snyder Cut. It's just he never got an opportunity to do more movies, and I really feel like his story wasn't fully realized. But in this movie, though, it's really well done. I love the fights. I love the opening with Krypton, where you actually get a little bit of time. We get to see Jor-El. Russell Crowe kills it as Jor-El, and Michael Shannon as Zod is probably, if I ever did a list of my favorite comic book villains, he would, and I'm probably gonna do that at some point. He is easily up there. He's probably like top of the list. He is fucking great. He nails it as Zod. His performance is Zod. The final fight is good. I love, obviously, his first flight is so, like, to me, when I think of a Superman scene, it's the scene where he saves Lois from the helicopter in Superman 78, but also this scene where he learns to fly. It's so fucking good. The music, Hans Zimmer really kills it with the score, and I like that he different, because keep in mind, he had just done the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, the score for those, which is great. And I like that he differentiated, and this is like, okay, this is very Superman. Obviously, the John Williams score is a little bit more iconic, but I do love the score for this movie. To me, this is my favorite Superman theme, but I understand why a lot of people have the Donner. I still think the Donner theme is great. The John Williams score is great, but I do love this theme. It always hits me when they play it. I love how it ends. I love the final fight. The scene where he destroys the world engine. I love that scene. Like, there's so much of those scenes in that movie. You know, if I wouldn't mind if they cut the scene where he destroys the guy's truck. I don't have a problem with it personally, but if they cut it, I wouldn't hate it. And I know a lot of people have the big controversy with the Jonathan Kent death, but I get what they were going for, but I can give, like, maybe they could have executed a little better. And if you think it could have been executed better, fine, we can agree to disagree on that. But Man of Steel is up there. I rewatched this movie fucking often. This is what if it was the closest. It was cool just seeing Superman punch shit and it looked fucking good. Because unfortunately, they never really get to show that side of Superman. And when we got to see it, and the scene where he ends up having to kill Zod and he does the yell he makes is so sad, because you feel for him. Because he's like, he had to kill one of his own. So yeah, that scene is fucking great. So Superman, Man of Steel is my number 6. My number 5, the first Spider-Man. I think the first Spider-Man is so fucking good. I think, like Superman 78, it is the prototype for a fucking great origin story. And you could tell that they learned a lot from that fucking movie. Because Peter Parker's story, I think this is the best Kirsten Dunst was as Mary Jane. I think she's fine in Spider-Man 2, but there's little points where I find her annoying. But I think she is the best in this movie. She's really likable. I think the love story is really well done. You want Peter to get the girl. Willem Dafoe as fucking Norman Osborn is so iconic. He's another one that's probably like top 5 villain performances in a film. And when I mean top 5, he's probably like number 2 or 3. Or even close to number 1. Like, he's so fucking good. the way they do the whole scene where he's talking to his mask, and that's Green Goblin, and the whole split personality with him and Norman is done so fucking well. James Franco as Harry Osborn is well done. I like the final fight in the movie. I love the little montage of him saving people, which, hot take, Superman 2025, that's what you should have fucking done. That little montage of him saving people was such a good way for us to see the character. I love the suit. It's so iconic. When I think Spider-Man suits, I love that specifically Spider-Man 2, but the Spider-Man suit from this movie is also great, because this is like, that is our first time seeing Spider-Man. This is one of those theater. Even though I was only 6 years old, I savored the theater experience for this movie. It still to this day is like memorable to me. Seeing Spider-Man 1, and definitely when I get to Spider-Man 2, I'm also gonna say the same thing there. But it's such an iconic moment to me seeing the first Spider-Man movie, and I don't want to make it negative a little bit, but mentioning like it came off right after 9/11, and to see this movie and it was so feel good. It was such a feel good movie. But it had serious moments. Yeah, Spider-Man is a little bit of a funny character where he quips to the villains, but when things get serious, and I like they had that nice balance. Sam Raimi really killed it, man. And it's wild that this is the dude who also did fucking Evil Dead, So it's like how he can make a great Evil Dead movie, but then also end up making an iconic Spider-Man movie. Which also, like, if I had to list my favorite superhero origins, this is like number 2 for me. Superman 78 is probably number 1, but this is definitely number 2. Like, this is how you do a fucking origin story. So, Spider-Man 1 is my number 5. Number 4 is Batman Begins. I think Batman Begins is another one that is like arguable for me number 1. It's like that or Batman or Superman 78, but Batman Begins is such a great way to do the origin story. And as much as I think The Dark Knight is a better movie, I think this one is a better Batman movie, because I think they did a good job of balancing the comic aspect and also the realistic take that Nolan was going for. I think Gotham still looked like a city, because I feel like, unfortunately, as much as I love The Dark Knight, and I do like the Dark Knight aspect of The Dark Knight Rises, I think they get a little bit too realistic with like Gotham, to the point it just looks like a generic city. This one, at least Gotham had an interesting design, and I really don't like that they strayed away from that in the later ones. And this was the movie that revived a little bit of DC as a film franchise, because up until this point, you only had Marvel doing comic book movie stuff, because they didn't make Batman, like I said, they didn't make Batman and Robin, which really hurt, especially DC. It hurt this brand of superheroes, but Marvel came back with like Spider-Man, Blade, the X-Men, and all these one-off. I mean, there was little not great comic book films in there that Marvel made, but they largely kept the brand up, so that's why you kept getting more and more Marvel movies, whereas DC took a while, since 1997 really. DC more focused on their animated stuff. So for them to finally get back to doing movies with this one, they really took a chance, but they got the right director with a Christopher Nolan, who had a vision. And there's little things I don't like in this movie too. I don't like that scare, because Cillian Murphy, I think, was really good as as Scarecrow, and I really don't like that he was basically just a red herring. Because even in the trailers, they made it seem like he was gonna be like one of the main villains, but he was the red herring because the real villain was Ra's al Ghul. Which I thought that stuff was still well done. Obviously, it wasn't full on comic accurate, but that's fine. Lucius Fox, Michael Caine as fucking Alfred is great. I thought the way they did the Wayne's death is really good. I think BVS probably has the best Wayne's death, but I do think this movie has like the second best. I really love the Wayne's death in this one. It's really iconic when he's just on his knees after his parents are dead. It's just so well done. It's iconic. Gary Oldman is fucking as Commissioner Gordon is so good. It's everything you want in a Batman movie. But I like I said, it still had that little bit of the comic aspect. I like that they still try to make Gotham look unique and they didn't just make Gotham look like generic city. You know? And I'll admit, I don't love the Tumblr these days as much, but I still think the Tumblr looks cool. And I watch Batman Begins very often, so yeah, that's my number 4. Number 3 is another Batman film, Batman '89. This is the Batman movie that got me to be a Batman fan. This and like Batman the Animated Series. Just, it's a great movie. Obviously, there's little issues here and there, but honestly, I still watch it very often. Jack Nicholson as the Joker is my favorite version of the Joker live action because he is the closest we have gotten to a comic book Joker. And I really feel like everything about it, like Tim Burton aesthetic worked. I love the introduction, the I'm Batman. Michael Keaton actually is really underrated as Bruce Wayne the more I watch him these days. And I'll admit Vicky Vale's probably the only kind of weak aspect of the movie, and I don't know if it was just because Kim Basinger isn't as good of an actress as compared to some of the other people in the movie, but I feel like the movie itself is still really good. It's still like iconic. The score is great from Danny Elfman. It has everything you want in a comic book movie. And yeah. But yeah, Batman '89. So number 3, or no, that was my number 3. Number 2, Batman Begins is The Dark Knight. I think The Dark Knight this used to be my number 1 for a while, and it's a perfect movie. You know, obviously, I think they do get a little away from the comic book aspect, and I'll admit this is where they do start kind of making Gotham just look like generic city, but I really still like the movie. It's still really well done. I love the opening. Heath Ledger as the Joker is great. And this is where comic book films could be all different types of movies. And this is more of a serious film, and Nolan really put his all to it. And you could tell it was trying to seriously set up something. Aaron Eckhart as Two-Face, which I just wish he had a little bit more scenes. He was really good. I don't like Maggie Gyllenhaal, but she doesn't have a lot of scenes, so like it doesn't bring down the movie. And it's just obviously the whole villain line, you live long enough to become the villain, is just very iconic. That's quoted to this day. It's a comic book film that even if you're not into comic books, like everyone loves Dark Knight. Like it this is one of my favorite theater experiences. No, I'm right. Number 3, because Batman '89 would have been number 4. Okay, I'm right. The Dark Knight is great. So, and number 2, Spider-Man 2. I think this is a comic book film this is another one that I have really fond memories for. And it's just, it was such a perfect follow because I really love the first one. So when they announced, well, I just remember them seeing the trailer and they announced, oh, we're doing a Spider-Man 2. So I was like, oh, let's go. And then seeing that movie, and it just was such, that's my favorite movie of 2004, to be honest with you. And you get more of Peter's story, the whole him losing powers thing, which I still like. I'll admit I don't love it as much these days because I'll admit I'm a little bit over, because the whole trope of heroes losing powers has gotten a little tiresome, but it's still a really good movie. The train scene's iconic, and Doc Ock is great. Like Alfred Molina kills it as fucking kills it as Doc Ock. Um, I love how much of a complex villain he was, and just, yeah, man, like he really did a good job of showing you how you can have a villain that wants to do things for the right reasons is done well, but he's not uber sympathetic because when he is doing bad things, he's doing bad things, but they do a good job of having that balance. And Spider-Man 2 is one I rewatch fucking often. It's such a good fucking movie. It's the best Spider-Man movie. It still to this day has not been unbeaten. Yeah, Mary Jane's a little bit more annoying in it, but I could get over it. Like, it's still a great film. It's one I watch very fucking often. It, yeah. So Spider-Man 2 is my number two. And then number one, this is one that's more of like one that has kind of happened to be over the years, especially in the last couple years. But Watchmen. I think Watchmen, the fact that it's straight up like the comic, and it feels like when you think of a comic book film, that Sin City and then this, because it's straight up like the comic. The only thing they do change is the end, which I'm gonna be real with you. I prefer the movie ending over the comic ending. I think the whole giant squid thing is a little weird. I think it works for the comics. It would not have worked live action. They even try to ham fist it in the shitty show, and I just don't think it really worked. You have cool imagery, but that was it. It didn't actually impact anything, so I'm kind of cool cutting that story. Dr. Manhattan's iconic. Fucking Night Owl. Even fucking Night Owl. Patrick Wilson is really memorable as Night Owl. Rorschach is fucking great. And I know Alan Moore doesn't like that people like him, but he's such a complex character that, yeah, he doesn't necessarily do things the right way, but he's still such a good character in the men go to jail. Dogs get put down. Such an iconic scene. You're not locked in here with me. I'm locked in here with you. Like, you know what I mean? No, I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me. It's so fucking iconic. And I love the fight in the prison. Obviously, that's more like, because that's another edition that wasn't really like in the comic. They do, because I think it was in the comic. It's in the comic, but it's like quick. But they actually make a whole scene out of it, which was done well. And I actually love it as like a little bit of a period piece. Obviously, it's a different future, but because they go back in time a lot of the movies, so I thought that was done well. Even a character like the comedian who Jeffrey Dean Morgan fucking kills it as is such a complex character. He does a lot of fucked up things. He attempts to rape the original um, Carla Gino's in it as the original Silk Spectre, I think is her name. And he attempts to rape her. He kills his pregnant wife, or not wife, but a girl he got pregnant. He tortured some kids with pellet guns or airbag guns, but he also acknowledged he fucked up. So it's like they really do a good job, like having all these complex characters, and it's a little bit of a darker comic book film because it's not done in the vein of a normal comic book film, but it's very well done. I say watch the extended cut. There's a cut where it's like I forgot what it's called, but it has there's like a comic that this kid's reading that they actually animate when he's reading it. You can watch that cut, but you can even just watch the normal extended cut. And yeah, because I'm gonna be real with you, that's the version I watched, was the extended cut first. I didn't even actually see the theatricals. I think I was gonna go see it in theaters, and something happened. I didn't get to see it in theaters at the time, but back in 2009. But well, they treat a lot of these superheroes that they're very flawed. A lot of them are very flawed. A lot of them have issues, and it's done well, and it's kind of doing what quote unquote like shit like The Boys and shit is doing, but I think Watchmen does it better because it's still clearly they revere superheroes. It's just complex, And yeah, Watchmen is one I don't watch as often because obviously it's a little bit of a longer movie, but it's fucking great. I think it's a superhero movie that I think most people need to watch once, and it's the reason I have it at number one because it is straight up like the comics. There's so many scenes there that are straight up like the fucking panel brought to fucking life. That it's just done so well, and it's even shot like a comic, and that's why I really like it. So Watchmen is my number one. So this is kind of a last second video, and it's kind of fun doing this. Now I've been going for like an hour, but I haven't done a video for like over an hour for a while, so why not? So thought this would be a good discussion, and yeah, Watchmen's fucking great, and a lot of the movies I listed are fucking great. So anyways, the next video will probably be a review. I don't know if I'll do it tomorrow or Tuesday, but I'll be doing a video. I'll figure out what I'm going to review next. It might be a horror movie, and though it's past October, I don't care. It's horror movie all year where I'm at, so yeah. But anyways, it's Halloween all year where I'm at, so we'll be doing another horror. I'll probably do some random horror movie sometime this week. I'll do it either Monday or Tuesday. But anyways, guys, I'll talk to y'all later. Alright, y'all. I'll talk to y'all later. Subscribe to Pin Down Podcast. Peace.